Warning: the following video contains graphic content that may be disturbing to some viewers. Discretion is advised.
For Murder, Episode 1, Oakland County Child Killer. Here's what happened. The Oakland County Child Killer, OCCK, is the name given to the perpetrator responsible for the killings of at least 4 children in Oakland County, Michigan in 1976 and 1977. The victims were held captive before being killed, and forensic DNA testing has indirectly implicated 2 suspects, one of whom has since died, with the other serving life in prison for offenses against children. A DNA profile created from samples taken from some of the victims' bodies is from the main perpetrator, but does not match the DNA of anyone named in connection with the case, and his identity is unknown. Between February 15, 1976 and March 16, 1977, 2 boys and 2 girls aged between 10 and 12 years old went missing outside their homes, en route to or from another location in Oakland County, Michigan. Each child's body was discovered in a public area within 19 days of his or her disappearance. The children were all either strangled or shot, with the 2 boys having been sexually abused. The 4 deaths triggered a murder investigation which at the time was the largest in U.S. history, with Detroit's 2 daily newspapers, as well as the area's numerous radio and television stations, covering the case. A presentation on WXYT radio, entitled Winter's Fear. The Children, the Killer, the Search, won the Peabody Award in 1977. Mark Stebbins, 12, of Ferndale, did not return home from an American Legion Hall on February 15, 1976. His body was found 4 days later, wearing the same clothes he was last seen in, lying in a snowbank in the parking lot of a local office building. He had been strangled and sexually abused with a foreign object and had 2 lacerations to the left rear of his head. Rope marks were evident on both his wrists and ankles, indicating he had been bound during his captivity. Jill Robinson, 12, of Royal Oak, left her home on December 22, 1976, following an argument with her mother over dinner preparations. The following day, her bicycle was found behind a local hobby store, before her body was found alongside Interstate 75 in Troy, within view of Troy Police Station, on the morning of December 26. She had been shot in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun, and her body was fully clothed and wearing the backpack she had taken with her when she left home. Christine Mihalik, 10, of Berkeley, was reported missing on January 2, 1977, after she failed to return home from a 7-Eleven store in Oakshire. A mail carrier found her fully clothed body 19 days later on the side of a rural road in Franklin Village. She had been smothered to death less than 24 hours earlier, and her body lay within view of nearby homes. Timothy King, 11, left his home in Birmingham and went to a drugstore on the evening of March 16, 1977. After he failed to return home, an intensive search covering the entire Detroit metropolitan area was conducted before his body was found on the evening of March 22 by 2 teenagers in a shallow ditch alongside Gill Road in Livonia. He had been sexually assaulted with a foreign object and suffocated approximately 6 hours earlier. After the discovery of Christine Mihalik's body, authorities noticed similarities shared by her case and those of Mark Stebbins and Jill Robinson, and reports were released warning the public that a serial killer was possibly operating in the Oakland County area. The Michigan State Police led a group of law enforcement officials from 13 communities in the formation of a task force devoted solely to the investigation into the killings of the 3 children. After Timothy King disappeared, a woman told authorities that she had seen a boy with a skateboard, fitting King's description, talking to a man in the parking lot of the drugstore that King went to on March 16, 1977. A composite drawing of the suspected kidnapper and a description of his vehicle, a blue AMC Gremlin, was released, and authorities questioned every Gremlin owner in Oakland County. Investigators created a profile based on witnesses' descriptions of the man seen talking to King, a white male aged between 25 and 35 with a dark complexion, shaggy hair and sideburns, who had a job that gave him freedom of movement and made him appear trustworthy to children, was familiar with the area, and could keep children captive for long periods of time without rousing neighbors' suspicions. The task force checked more than 18,000 tips, which resulted in about 24 arrests on unrelated charges and the discovery of a multi-state child pornography ring operating on North Fox Island in Lake Michigan. The task force was unable to make much headway in the investigation, disbanding in December 1978, with the investigation being turned over to the state police. A few weeks after the death of Timothy King, a psychiatrist who worked with the task force received a letter, riddled with spelling errors, written by an anonymous author, Alan, claiming to be a sadomasochist slave of Frank, the OCCK. Alan wrote that they had both served in the Vietnam War and that Frank was traumatized by having killed children and had taken revenge on more affluent citizens, such as the residents of Birmingham, wanting rich people to suffer for sending forces to Vietnam. Alan expressed fear and remorse in his letter, saying he was losing his sanity and was endangered and suicidal, and admitted to having accompanied Frank, as Frank sought boys to kill. Alan instructed the psychiatrist to respond by printing the code words, "Weather Bureau says trees to bloom in 3 weeks," in that Sunday's Free Press edition, before offering to provide photographic evidence in exchange for immunity from prosecution. The psychiatrist arranged to meet Alan at a bar, but Alan did not show up and was never heard from again. Archibald Edward Sloan, a child molester who victimized young boys in his neighborhood, became a person of interest after hair samples found in his 1966 Pontiac Bonneville matched hair found on the bodies of Timothy King and Mark Stebbins, but the hair was not from Sloan himself. A witness claimed to have seen Timothy King being abducted by 2 men, one described as being in his late 20s and the other described as bearing a strong resemblance to serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who was allegedly in Michigan around the time of the killings. Gacy's DNA did not match DNA found on the victims' bodies. Police in Parma Heights, Ohio, arrested Ted Lamborghini, a retired auto worker believed to have been involved in a child pornography ring in the 1970s. On March 27, 2007, investigators told Detroit television station WXYZ that Lamborghini was considered the top suspect in this case. Lamborghini pleaded guilty to 15 sex-related counts involving young boys, rather than accept a plea bargain that would have required him to take a polygraph test on the Oakland County child killings. Lamborghini also rejected an offer of a reduced sentence in exchange for a polygraph on the case. In October 2007, the family of Mark Stebbins filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Lamborghini seeking $25,000. The lawsuit alleges Lamborghini, who lived in Metro Detroit in the late 1970s, abducted Stebbins and held him captive in a Royal Oak house for 4 days in February 1976, before smothering him to death during a sexual assault. Lamborghini has never been formally linked nor charged in the death of Mark Stebbins. Attorney David A. Binkley has sought compensation, including funeral costs, for Stebbins' brother, Michael, but stressed that money is secondary. The case sparked new interest when Timmy King's father, Barry, and brother, Chris, tried to get the Michigan State Police to release information about Chris Bush, the son of Harold Lee Bush, a high-level General Motors executive. Chris Bush had been in police custody shortly before Timmy's abduction for suspected involvement in child pornography. He allegedly committed suicide in November 1978. There was no gunshot residue found on him, though, and no blood spatter. Furthermore, there were 4 shell casings found in his room. He was also found wrapped neatly under his sheets. There was 1 bullet hole between his eyes. No blood and blood-stained ligatures were found in his apartment, as was a hand-drawn image of a boy closely resembling Mark Stebbins screaming in agony, which was found pinned to the wall of the room in which Bush allegedly committed suicide. There had been no confirmed activity by the Oakland County Child Killer for nearly 20 months prior to Bush's death. The Michigan State Police have since released 3,400 pages of investigative records to Barry King. Police reports obtained by Barry King included new revelations, including DNA testing of new suspects, a sketch of a boy found at the scene of Bush's suicide, resembling Mark Stebbins screaming and wearing a hooded sweatshirt, and a bloody rope also found at the scene of Bush's death. Catherine Broad, sister of Timothy King, compiled an archive of investigation material as the case grew. Upon researching the case records, the King family produced a documentary entitled Decades of Deceit. The documentary condemns the investigators and prosecutors for alleged shoddy investigations and uncooperative communication, and, in particular, for disregarding leads that the King family discovered in 2006. Funds generated from the sale of the documentary were donated to the Tim King Fund, designated to help abused children and support child activities for Birmingham children. Forensic DNA tests conducted in 2012 showed that hair found on the seat of Sloan's 1966 Pontiac Bonneville and on the bodies of Stebbins and King were a match and came from the same unknown man. The hair DNA does not match Sloan, but implicates someone he knew or lent his car to. In 2013, an anonymous informant reported a blue AMC gremlin buried in a farm field now being developed in Grand Blanc. Police are investigating the gremlin for ties to the crime, as Timothy King was last seen in a blue gremlin. In 2005, an unidentified man, who would later emerge to become a common figure in the case and has been referred to by the alias of Jeff, was reminded of a relationship he had in 1977 with an acquaintance. In an interview given to Oakland County investigators in 2010, Jeff informed them of atypical observations and actions while driving and conversing with the acquaintance, such as taking him to buildings where satanic rituals were performed according to the acquaintance. The acquaintance navigated through lesser-known routes associated with the case with ease. The acquaintance also spoke of details written in Allen's letter. Jeff requested information about the Allen letter to help confirm his suspicions, but was denied. In 2010, Jeff gave a recorded interview to Oakland County investigators and prosecutor Jessica Cooper to present evidence pertaining to the investigation. Jeff claimed to have tried to approach her with his findings and to convince her to place the case under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice to expedite the case. The department was already involved as FBI investigators and through resources such as the VICAP database. Prosecutor Cooper dismissed his suggestions and, as there was no new evidence presented, his request to inspect the Allen letter was denied. Cooper describes the interview on the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office blog as a rambling statement outlining a theory that the Oakland County Child Killer abductions and murders were related to pagan holidays, the lunar calendar, and Wiccan rituals. Jeff proceeded to correspond with Deborah Jarvis, mother of victim Christine Mihalik, and investigative journalists such as Bill Proctor and Heather Catallo in 2010. He claimed that he was among a team of a dozen investigators involved with the case and could identify the perpetrator of the crimes, but refused to indicate which law enforcement division he worked for. He claimed to have invested 10,000 hours into the investigation over several years, but was reluctant to release his results, as he doubted the competence of Wayne and Oakland County investigators. In a press release email, Jeff indicated possible meddling by Jessica Cooper and other reasons as to why he had not made his investigation public. According to Paul Hughes, an attorney representing Jarvis, Jeff's investigation discovered the murderer. However, according to Hughes, Jeff refused to identify the culprit unless the authorities divulged crucial information which Jeff requested during the initial phone questioning in 2010. Jeff wanted to positively confirm the identity of his suspect using the police evidence before proceeding further. In 2012, Jeff presented his findings to a select group of Detroit journalists on Hughes' cell phone. To preserve his anonymity, he insisted that his phone interview with Hughes not be recorded. He theorized that the killers were conducting Wiccan human sacrifice rituals coinciding with pagan celebrations or the lunar calendar. According to Jeff, there was a total of approximately 11 to 16 victims, significantly more than the 4 officially confirmed victims. Jeff claimed his team found a number of similarities among the cases that were highly unlikely to be purely coincidental. Based on this information, Hughes attempted a lawsuit against the Oakland County authorities for $100 million, citing mishandling of the investigation and demanding Cooper's resignation. The lawsuit alleged a cover-up, conspiracy, and obstruction. Hughes' website solicited donations and offered a copy of Jeff's report for a donation of $1,500. The families of the victims and Cooper claimed that Hughes and Jeff were attempting to profit on their distress. The case was dismissed in March 2012 for lack of evidence. In February 2019, the Investigation Discovery Channel aired a 2-part, 4-hour documentary about the killings. At this same time, WXYZ-TV investigative reporter Heather Catallo announced that a key suspect, convicted child sex offender Arch Edward Sloan, had failed a polygraph test when he was interviewed by the Oakland County Child Killer Task Force in 2010 and 2012. Back in 2012, new DNA technology found that Sloan's car, a 1966 Bonneville, contained hair with the same mitochondrial profile as evidence found on the victims. However, it is not Sloan's. There may be a new suspect in the Oakland County child killings of the 1970s with new DNA evidence linking the 4 young victims. The killer held Mark Stebbins, Kristen Mihalik, Jill Robinson and Timothy King for several days before killing them. After the murder, he cleaned their bodies and clothes and placed them on display on streets throughout Metro Detroit. The more than 40-year-old mystery has gone unsolved with many leads and speculation, but no physical evidence. Hairs from a white dog have been found on the clothing of all 4 victims, so they know that all 4 of these cases are definitely linked together. The new evidence leads investigators to believe more than one person may have been involved. They believe that it probably took more than one person because, remember, these poor kids were held for several days, and in some cases more than a week and a half, and kept alive, before they were eventually killed and left on the streets of Metro Detroit. A DNA match from new hairs discovered on one of the victims has led investigators to a suspect who was never named before. All this time, the families didn't know there were some hairs on the body of one of the victims, Christine Mihalik. And now they've been able to link that hair to a man in Kalamazoo, Michigan, a man by the name of James Vincent Gunnels. Police believe the hairs found on Christine Mihalik are a mitochondrial DNA match to Gunnels. Police reports say this is the first physical evidence match in the Oakland County Child Killer case's history. Police believe Gunnels, 16 years old at the time, was part of a group involved in the killings. Police have also said Gunnels was molested by a key suspect in the case, a man named Christopher Bush. Police have been questioning James Gunnels, and he says he doesn't know how his hair got on her body and that he doesn't know her. But he does say that he was an associate of one of the main suspects in the Oakland County Child Killer case, a man named Chris Bush, a man who committed suicide many years ago. Although they do not believe Gunnels was the Oakland County Child Killer, police say Gunnels may have worked with the killer. Police are considering that James Vincent Gunnels may have been used to lure these children to the car, closer to the killers. Although they have a DNA match, police still are not able to arrest Gunnels. Even with the hair that they have, police do not have enough evidence to hold James Gunnels in custody. So, they had to let him go from prison to the halfway house, and now out into the public, living in the Kalamazoo area. The investigation continues. Thanks for watching True Murder. Please like, share, and subscribe. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss a new episode.